Hi, a film that I watched recently that aired on the BBC, despite having only been released last year, was the documentary The Most Beautiful Boy in the World. It's the story of Björn Andrésen, who was chosen from thousands of young boys during an open casting call by a filmmaker Luchino Visconti for his 1971 film Death in Venice. The story of Death in Venice is that a dying composer travels to the city but becomes infatuated by a adolescent boy um, in an almost something that is beyond sexual, but he is enraptured by this almost angelic young boy. And Andresen talks about his involvement in the film, but more specifically the fallout after it was made. Um, Particularly the way that he was preyed upon by older gay men, and how Visconti would publicly label him as the most beautiful boy in the world, a label that has haunted him ever since. We also see a great deal of Andresen's background. He had a troubled family life. The story of what happened to his parents is particularly difficult. Um, and we see him as he is now, a musician, occasional actor, most recently appearing in the film Midsummer, and getting by living in a small flat in Stockholm. It's a fascinating film because it looks at what happens after fame, or rather, after fame is imposed upon somebody. Anderson didn't expect any of what happened to him. He recounts going to Japan after the film was released and becoming a star there in commercials and releasing music simply because his appearance was such that it made him a great pin-up star. And his looks have been enormously influential. The Bishonen type in anime is largely based on his own appearance. But it's been a tremendous burden, as I said. He was preyed upon by older gay men. Visconti himself is suggested was very interested. And he was in a position where he was unable to deal with that and to cope with that, and he didn't have anybody to look out for him. It's an interesting story. He travels to the various locations where he'd worked in the past, to Venice, to Japan, and we see the life through his eyes, as he is now an old man, long beard, long hair, living in a small apartment, which he is told at the start of the film he will have to massively clear out if he doesn't want to be evicted, because it's absolutely filthy. And we're even privy to an argument he has over the phone with his girlfriend, which leads to them breaking up. So, as a portrait of what happens after someone is pushed into the public eye and then recuperates, it's quite a fascinating film. Um, it's difficult for me to judge documentaries because I have to think not just about the story that we're being told, which is a story that already exists, but about the filmmaking nature itself. The film is not tremendously adventurous in that sense, but it's trying to let Anderson's story be told clearly and thoroughly, so it doesn't want tricks and any kind of fireworks getting in the way, which is only natural in a story like this. Um, so although it was a fascinating story and certainly worth watching as a film in its own right, I'm not sure I'd be able to recommend it as a piece of art. But the story itself of Björn Anderson is remarkable, and the film, as a result, is definitely worth watching.